most thought-provoking hour of the day, dropping jewels and nuggets for the next 60 minutes. For us, by us. You're listening to the Hold Your Point podcast.
What up, what up, what up? Good afternoon, good morning, good day to you, wherever we catching you at. This is the Hold Your Point podcast. We are the Hold Your Point podcast crew. My name is Fortunato. We got DJ in the building, DTH, Mike Joseph, Mr. Leviathan. And we got some very special guests, some very special guests in the building. I thought I said that wrong. We're going to let them go around and introduce themselves real quick because we got a very, very special topic this evening.
Very special.
We're going to let our special guests go ahead and introduce themselves if y'all want to take it away. No particular order.
Nice to meet you guys. Nice to see you.
Hi, I'm Kishana. I'm glad to be here.
All right.
Good to have y'all.
Hi, I'm Rachel, aka Layla, Rachel A. I'm happy to be here.
Sounds French. Okay.
All right, that's what's up, man. And,
nice to have y'all.
Yeah, it's definitely a pleasure to have you guys on the Hold Your Point podcast. This is our first episode. We're having a few guests on the show. So definitely a pivotal point, man. So welcome. Thank you guys for taking some time out of your busy Tuesday to tap in with us and drop some thought-provoking jewels for the people. But as you can see, we got a mixed crowd, and we got a very special topic this evening. Before we get started, as you know, our podcast, we talk about Black experience, Black culture, through a Christian and millennial perspective. So we're going to tap right in. But today we want to talk about women in leadership. Women in leadership. And, there's just so many layers to it. There's people who agree with certain aspects and there's just things that can cause a ruckus when you start talking about women in leadership. But just as a general cadence, I want to see what is y'all perspective on the balance of women in leadership today in 2022? Y'all see it at 50-50? Is it where it needs to be, or is there work still to be done? What's y'all perspective on it?
I think that things are more or less okay. Nothing's ever perfect. I think perfect is an ideal that humans are continually striving for. But as far as leadership goes, we can be talking about obviously the church, as we might get into a little bit more, but just the world in general. I think you're seeing a lot more women in leadership roles. There are a lot more CEOs, I think, than in times past that are at the head of really big companies. And so I think that it's in a pretty decent place.
DTH said decent. What y'all think?
Yeah, for me, I've been seeing a lot of women entrepreneurs. It's been an uprising when it comes down to that, boss women. But I still believe that there can be work as far as the balance between feminine and masculine.
Yeah, I like that. As far as my thoughts on it, you still, as far as with corporate America, you still kind of hear the chirpings of disgruntled women about wages not being fair and, different things like that, and how men are getting promoted to certain managerial roles and women are getting passed up. But, women are, like Miss Rose stated, women are, their own business. They go in to start their hair salon or they running their own show now. So they kind of just creating their own avenue. So I think it's pretty awesome. So.
Yeah, no, I'll chime in here. I think there is a capacity for women to hold some type of leadership. It definitely has increased over the past couple years. In terms of you see more women leaders, you see more women leaders in politics, you see more women leaders in the Senate. All these things, all these things are kind of you see it increasing more and more in times go on. Right now, we have a woman vice president. For the first time ever. Just as an example. So you see the women in leadership roles kind of like expanding and being more prevalent, being more something that's more seen and if you want to say accepted nowadays. It kind of it begs a question, but that's for I'll leave that to the host.
I mean, don't clam up on me now.
He put you on the spot.
Well, I mean,
No,
because
I'll
like,
be.
well, I mean, because I think the commonality of what we're saying is like it's happening now, right? But like, why y'all think it's taking like so long? Like, why y'all think there's still like a gap in representation of female leadership in corporate America or in healthcare or just in like public figures like all together like right now? Like, why is it just like yeah, now it's getting better, but if you turn on the WNBA game, like it's still gonna be NPCs, like people still ain't trying. I'm gonna be like, I'm not gonna go too hard there, but I'm just saying, like, there's still gaps, and so why do y'all think there's still gaps in representation in 2022's America?
I actually looked up some statistics that
Ooh.
it's from 2018. Everything kind of lags behind a couple of years for them to do their research and data collection. And this is from the Center of American Progress. So it's a nonpartisan policy and research organization. And so I don't want to bore you with statistics, but when I saw them, I was very shocked. So basically, they said that women make up about 50.8% of the US population. We hold 57% of undergraduate degrees, and we hold 59% of all master's degrees. And we've basically outnumbered men in colleges since 1988. But there's still a very significant lag in women in leadership positions. So, for example, in the legal realm, women are about 45% of associates, but only 22% partner. In the education field, women have had the majority of doctorate degrees for the last 8 years, but only 32% of them are full professors or college presidents. And I think there's like 30%. So only 30% of women are college presidents. In politics, like you guys just mentioned, there's only about 24% of women in Congress. And like I said, this is from 2018. So maybe the numbers are a little bit, um, give and take here and there. But basically, I think it's pretty much the same. There's only 18% women governors, only 23% women mayors, and women of color is a lot less. And even in the film industry, it's the same. So it's only about 18% of women who are directors, executive producers, etc. And in the corporate world, like you mentioned, I think, Nigel, women account for only 5% of CEOs for Fortune 500 companies and only 7% of top executive in Fortune 100 companies. So basically,
It's disparaging
yeah,
numbers.
yes. So it's gotten better, obviously. Like you said, we have a woman vice president. But the fact that we're saying we have the first woman vice president tells us that why are we talking about first in 2022, right?
Yeah.
Because clearly we still have a ways to go. So basically, the article was talking about how if women are perceived as nice and warm and nurturing, then they couldn't possibly be a leader, God forbid. But if they're, if they take charge, if they're more assertive, then whoa, now they're masculine and now they're aggressive. So it's like women are walking on this tightrope of, am I being too nurturing so I'm not a leader, or am I being too assertive so now I'm not, now I'm not a woman? So I think that is probably one of the biggest reasons, is because it's always like this.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to jump. Sorry, I want to jump in there. I was talking to my coworker the other day, and because he said one of his worst bosses he's ever had was a woman, and it's because it's like they have something to prove in that spot. And it's how they got there was being this overbearing, this annoying. He said having a male boss he'll have a male boss any day, but having like any female super, and it's not to be sexist or anything. It's the fact that, like you said, they have to prove themselves to get there, and it's pretty sad. But it's like now it's like a lack of respect, and now he's contemplating himself. I don't know how he feels about it, but you know what I'm saying, that's how it's crazy.
That's interesting though, because I've had several female bosses in my career, right? And even currently, I've never had a problem with any of them. But I know several women I've worked with who have told me they do not want to work for a female boss. And I always thought that was really interesting because I would think as a guy, I'm cool with a guy, and I've had female bosses as well, and I'm cool with them too. I would think women would be more all right with it, but I've had several of them say, I do not like working for another woman. And I guess me trying to understand, I guess maybe there's like a clash there, but it's an interesting thing.
That is crazy that you say that, because I asked my coworker today, who's a female, because I knew I was coming on this show today, and I asked her. I said, because both of our bosses are female, and I'm asking her, I'm like, do you think that you would rather a male boss, as your manager? Whereas, where we have instead of a female manager, and she says, I would rather a male, like personally, she would. And I was crazy that she would say that. And I asked her why, and she says, because generally speaking, women are more like catty, or like we make a fuss about everything. And, compared to men who are more, they seem more laid back, like they have this, they don't care attitude. And, with a woman, it'll be more fussy, like she's more fussy, she's more moody, she's more emotional, or whatever the case may be. So I just find that, right. So I'm just like, okay, so, does that make her a bad boss, or is it just like, okay, because he doesn't have anything to prove? Like, I'm trying to figure out like where the disparity lies there,
So I want to ask y'all real quick. So do y'all think, like with everything that y'all just said, right? Do y'all think that means that men make better leaders than women do?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's the qualifications that make you a good leader. I just feel like women bosses are more, I guess you would say, catty and strict because, again, they feel like they have something to prove. Like if you look at history, back then you would never find a woman in a leadership position. And the only reason why we have women in leadership positions right now is because the perspective of the woman is being changed as time goes by. So of course you have to be the woman of today to stay in that position.
But that's funny that you say that, because I feel like and I don't mean to cut you short, Naja, but I feel like, I don't know if the word is better, because I still feel like there's still some attributes that like a woman can bring to the table that a man can utilize. Like I feel like women can generally be more understanding and be more like, and assertive at the same time. Whereas like with men, generally speaking, like, it'll just kind of be like one way with them, or the highway, I guess you could say.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I'll chime in here on that real quick. I'm glad that you mentioned a couple of those words, Layla, generally, and in that sense. I'll set it off like this. I think generally, if we're talking about statistics, I dare Dr. Wilder brought in some numbers here earlier. If we're talking about statistics and pure numbers, generally, men most likely would make better leaders than women. And I'll say it plain and simple. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Absolutely. Can there be women that can you find a woman and another man and say, hey, this woman leads better than this man? Absolutely, you can find those examples in this world. But I think if we're talking about pure numbers, and if we're talking about the attributes that come with the leader, some of us kind of mentioned it earlier about some of the things that we may not like about our bosses, some of the things that bosses do in some senses. But in some senses, the boss has to lay down the law sometimes. The boss is the person that you're not going to like, that has to make the tough decision, that has to be the person that, hey, this is what we're going to have to do. And you may not like it all the time, but that is what a leader and that is what a boss is. Someone who can make those tough decisions in tough times. And what we have seen, I'll let you go. What we have seen in both from a biblical standpoint, mostly from a biblical standpoint, is that men are typically attributed to be better leaders.
Now, I'm just going to go on the limb and say that
Sorry.
Mr. Leviathan's views are not all points.
Oh yes, this is pure Mr. Leviathan right here.
Right.
I'm just 1/5 to hold your point. Just 1/5.
Say it with your chest.
Well, I just want to clear up. These numbers are not because men are better leaders. These numbers are because women are not giving opportunity to lead.
But you gotta understand, we're in a male-dominated society. Yeah.
Hey, hold your point real quick. Let her finish.
The same way a lot of Black people, if we did this like a black and white or black and whatever, the statistics would be the same. Not because Black people are not better at whatever, it's just because we weren't given those opportunities to be that. Now, as far as who's a better leader, men or women, honestly, I don't think that there's an answer to that. I think it depends on what we're talking about. I think it depends where we're talking about. I think it, like you said, I think Keyshawn, I don't want to say your name wrong. Keyshana. Yeah, I think she mentioned that it depends on the qualifications. So I think there's so many different factors that go into what makes a better leader. I don't think we can just say men yes, women no. I think it really just depends on the setting, the context, and etc.
So I want to ask y'all another question, and I want to take it to church, but before we get to church, like I want to ask y'all another question. Like, do y'all think? Well, how do you think the world leaders would view America with a female president? Like with everything that's going on in the Middle East, with Ukraine, with Russia, China, everything. Like if we, now had representation for our country as a woman president, like how do y'all think the world would view us?
Listen, I don't know how true this is, but they're saying that there's certain countries that, our vice president can't even step in because they don't respect her as a woman. So they send another ambassador and representative. So it's pretty sad. It's not just, the whole woman and men theory. It's not starting from, it's actually culture in some countries. And it's sad, women can't walk down the street unless their face is covered because it's their religion, if they do, they get shot and they're considered, all sorts of bad things in there. So it's just, that's how I feel.
Fortunato, to answer your question, I think the world would look at us as sitting ducks. I think that if we had a female president, other countries are going to look at us and be like, oh, now's our chance. China's going to be like, okay, we've been building ourselves up all these years. Now's our chance. Now, whether that's right or wrong, that's a different discussion. But I'm just talking about the perception because we already know the United States is not very well liked among other countries, but they don't really mess with us, right? Because of the might that we have, the strength of our military, and not that the strength of the military would change, but I think just the perception of having a woman in charge of everything, I think other countries, especially in the Middle East and the Far East, would look at us and think they're weaker. That's honestly, I think, how they would look at it.
Yeah,
I kind of agree with you, DTH. Like we gotta take the emotion out of it. Like reality is reality. Like we're in a male dominated society, and this is not now. This is from years. This is from centuries. I mean, to get out of that will probably be unnatural if you think about it. It doesn't make it right or wrong. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I agree too.
I think what is it? New Zealand. I was just looking up. New Zealand has a female president, and I think
Come on now, Will.
I think they're the one. I think they did like the best in as far as the pandemic goes. I think they had like 3 cases.
Wow.
And they have a woman president. So I just wanted to put that out there. But I definitely do agree
that's
that
phenomenal.
countries
It's cool. It's cute, right? But not
It's
for
cute.
nothing. I mean, like,
It's cute.
like,
He said it's cute.
are they a nuclear power? Like, do they have nuclear weaponry in New Zealand?
I have no idea. I didn't look that far. I don't know.
I mean,
come on, protect command.
I just don't know. Like, I just don't know how big their seat is at the end table. You know, when we're talking about business.
What does that have anything to do with leadership?
I'm just saying. Come on with it, DJ. Come on with it, DJ.
No, I mean that doesn't really have anything to do with leadership as far as nuclear powers. But I know in like Dubai, I think DTH might have hit it. They don't have anti-discrimination laws against gender. You know, so they don't respect their women. That is just put it plain and simple. There's women that's actually like on the run, like trying to leave because of discrimination that they face over there. So of course, if they have, you know, America or wherever, Canada has a female president or somebody, a female sitting into a leadership role, they're not going to respect that country because they don't respect women. And, you know, it's just a old mindset of ways of thinking. So, I mean, it's nothing you can do. They just still ignorant, you know. I don't think we should follow that. You know, I think, you know, I'm going home my point. Y'all go.
It's you said it, DJ. It's culture and religion. It's what it is.
So now, in regards to, you know, religion, quote unquote, using that term loosely, but just looking at like Christianity, like, do y'all believe women should be leaders, or there should be more representation of women as leaders in the church? And by leaders, I mean like, you know, like ordained positions, whether it be like ministers or pastors or bishops or what have you. Because if the ability to lead is not based on like, you know, your position, like you have it or you don't have it, then if a woman has the ability to lead, should that be an opportunity even in the church?
I think so.
I think that there are safe positions for women, but not necessarily bishop and pastor. And I'm gonna use that. And this is what I mean when I say safe. This is kind of going back to like the positions in itself, because you can have a woman's leader of a woman's department, but I don't think that you should have a woman pastor of a whole church. That'll put her above men, above women, above, like, I think we need to kind of have when it comes to women, we have to kind of be careful, because when you come to the biblical standpoint, and just like how it would be in a literal sense, I mean, you know, to have a woman president, honestly, maybe not. To have a woman pastor, honestly, I don't think so. And that's just my point. The things say hold your point, so I got to be careful. But you know, I think that when it comes to a woman, we got to be safe. I might be biased. I don't know how the other 2 women feel. I'm not. I don't know, but I think when it comes to the women, we got to have a safe position. When I mean, like, yeah.
I agree with you, Rachel. It would be confusion, in my opinion, if a woman was head over the head of the household. That would be the men in the church, and I don't think God loves confusion. Another point that I wanted to make. Let me see here. All right, come back around to me.
Just to back her up real quick. Like, I mean, to have a woman as a head of a church, I think Layla Michelle, they both kind of was hitting it on the head. There's a certain capacity, I think, for a woman to be a head of a church, but I think there's only certain rules for that. And I'll bring in a little scripture here, 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3. It says, "But I want you to understand that Christ is the head of every man, and the man is the head of woman, and God is the head of Christ." I say that to say that you know, there is capacities where a woman can take leadership, but it most likely and in this sense has to be appointed by a man. You know, if there's a sort of a delegation of leadership in a certain capacity, because as Sister Rose said, God doesn't like confusion. He wants there to be somebody to answer to if there's final decisions, like I said earlier, decisions to be made. There needs to be someone that needs to be able to make those final hard decisions, things that need to be done, and obviously that person gets their leadership from God in that sense. So yeah.
So,
Oh boy, here we go. Come at me with it. I can see him
I
coming.
mean, I feel you on certain parts of it, but I think because if we get into that, then it's going to be like, okay, like if that's the case where the man is supposed to make the decisions, then why aren't we following it in corporate America? Like, I think it's more so like in a spiritual connotation and not really like just overall, because I keep it 100 with you. Like, who really runs the house? Like, when you have a 2-parent household, like, who is really in charge of the household? Like, for the most part?
My father ran my household.
It's the woman, but the man is the figurehead. That's what I say. Because you got, because you have, yes, because look, okay, you got to think about this. No, but you got to think about this. This is the way I look at the men and the women. The man is the head, but the woman is the neck.
Well,
yeah,
think about that.
The
woman is the neck.
I agree there.
Yeah.
So the head can't really move without the neck, honey.
But you don't know what figurehead means.
we gotta be careful. No, but think about that. So think about that. So I want the women need to understand that there is leadership in your role. You play your role, right? There's leadership there. Yes, the man is definitely dead. He's the head, honey. I give you that. But best believe it's gonna be us together. And if there's a way where if we're making a decision and my decision trumps yours, we're gonna go with mine, and in turn it will be our decision. I think you gotta have a conversation.
Wait. Hold on, we gotta sit on that real quick. We gotta sit on that. I want somebody to answer that for me. DJ, you cooking over there. So if your wife, you gonna never. Let me give it to DTA first.
Don't do that. Now here to break up no happy homes.
I don't want to answer the question.
Wait, DTA,
give it to me.
If your wife, if you say you're gonna do something, right, and you made up your mind about it, and your wife says no, we're doing this, and as to Layla's point, her decision sounds better, so it's gonna trump you. Is that it? I mean.
I heard my brother-in-law say something one time that I thought was real funny. Someone asked him if he's gonna put his foot down on a particular situation. He said the foot never go up, so there's no need to put it down. So in a situation like that, I think when there are two opposing paths and there's no reconciliation, you've already discussed it, and there's just an impasse, I believe you have to roll with the man's decision. I mean, if it was me, that's the way I'm going to run my house. And I think women should do that as well, only because I think most women would agree that they are looking for their man to lead. So there's very few women that I have come across that say, I want to make all the decisions. There are those out there for sure. But a lot of times I hear them say, oh, I want my man to lead. Well,
alpha females, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like when the time comes for those hard decisions and you both can't agree, you got to roll with the man. And, that the thing with that is he bears the brunt of the responsibility. So whether the family succeeds or fails, it's going to fall on him, especially the failures. I think men are rightfully, taking that load, which they were built for. And I think that's the difference when we're talking about leadership. God made us all with specific purposes. Of course, women have their role and men have theirs as well. And the men are built to shoulder that load of these very tough decisions. So in your very specific instance that you brought up, Fortunato, I would say we're going to have to roll with what I've decided for the family. And if the woman who has accepted my proposal, if I'm getting, I'm thinking we're married, right? then she should be in a place where she trusts me, even if she disagrees in a specific situation, but she trusts me to make the right decision for the family.
Just to piggyback off. Oh, sorry, hon. You could go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you look at Genesis, what happened with Adam and Eve when they ate from the fruit, God asked Adam what happened. Even though Eve was the one who, I guess, influenced Adam, God still held Adam accountable because he is the head. And another thing too with women, we have to make this is why we have to make sure that we're with men who are led by God, because we play the submissive role. So you want to make sure you're with a man who's going to be led in the right way.
Kishana, what word did you say?
Huh?
You said you have to play what role?
You said the S word?
Yes,
You don't want to take
she
that
said
back?
it, because guess what? The man is going to be led by God. Ain't that right, fellas?
Amen.
Well, he
Ain't
should
that
be
right,
led by
fellas?
God. Hold on. He should be led by God, and it's up to you to choose that man of God.
Amen.
Well, not
I mean,
necessarily.
I'm not proposing, but I got you though. I got you.
There you go.
I got you though.
All right, so I mean that kind of leads to what I was going to ask as well, since we hit there already. But what do y'all think it means to submit yourselves to your husbands in context of women leaders? Because like, let's say you have a woman who's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and like she's been doing her thing for a while, like single, and now she's gonna get married, of course, in a Christian aspect or perspective, but now she's going to be married to a man where, now he's going to have to lead and she's going to have to submit. And she's probably used to making decisions all the time and being in a role where, what she says carries a lot of weight. So like, how do y'all think that transcends to when, you have to submit to your husband, but you're dominant as a woman leader?
I think there are women who are able to do both. I think women know if they're in a role at work where they're required to be a leader and exercise certain, decisions. When she comes home to her husband, she can be submissive to him. I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. And I just want to add that I think it's important for the older women, especially, to be examples for the younger ones, because I think the younger ones are more susceptible to propaganda and different things that are being taught today about the roles of men and women in relationships. And, Titus 2:3-5, I'm going to go ahead and read it. It says, likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way that they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to wine. Let them urge the younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled, pure, busy at home, to be kind, subject to their husbands, so that no one will malign the word of God. So it's incumbent upon older women to be the example for the younger women, how they should behave in a committed marriage relationship. So again, just to go back to your question, you can be a leader at your job. You can be the boss chick or however you want to call it. But when you come home to your husband, he's supposed to be the head. And if not, I think there's going to be, there will be issues.
Do you think, all right, so do you think there's some constraints that's put on it? So let's say, like, for instance, she's a doctor, right? She makes a certain amount of money a year, and he is a manager at Burlington, right?
Okay.
Yeah, whatever. But when she's at her job, she's making decisions. She's around other power players. Like she's making things happen. And they grew up together. Whatever. He's trying to chase a dream that hasn't popped yet. And in the meantime, he's a manager at Burlington. Like, do you think there's some constraints come with her submitting to this man who makes a fraction of what she's bringing home a year?
I could go, but I'll let someone else go on.
I think, of course, there's going to be constraints, but I think there's a lot that goes into it. I think, as we're talking, I think Levi said, or sorry, I'm not using the proper names. Mr. Leviathan, I think that we, basically it's your choice as women to choose a man who is being led by God. Like me, I grew up in a household where I saw my mother lead, because if she didn't, then we would just be in the streets. There was nobody there to lead. So what was she going to do? Not lead? So of course that was passed down to me in my DNA. And then it was passed down to me with my nurture. So nurture and nature. But now as I'm getting older, I'm reading the word and I realized, yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be the Afro female. I am naturally, but I don't want to do that. After all these, like you said, you're making decisions at work. I want to come home and not make no decisions. I just want to know if I want to eat cheese or if I want to eat pepperoni. That's it. That's all the decisions I want to make. And I'm playing light. Of course, I want to make other decisions, but I say that to say it really depends on the man, because men have to lead in humility, not in banging on my chest. I'm the head of the household, howling at the moon. You have to lead in humility and wisdom. And I think one thing that is missing from the men that I have been seeing, and I'm not saying that all men, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the men that I have seen with my eyes. I know there are some out there, but the men that I have been seeing, minus my daddy, because he's perfect. Minus my daddy, but I've seen that, like when Jesus, because the Bible says men should lead their households like Christ leads the church, or you guys know the verse. But Jesus was always going off in a corner praying and seeking God's face. When was the last time y'all went in corners and sought the face of the Lord? Don't answer that question. Just think about it in your head, right? So it's like I want a man who leads. I do. But I want a man who is seeking God constantly, because I'm not, I don't mind. Like I always say, I want God to be in the driver's seat, my man to be in the passenger seat, and me in the back seat. But I'm not going to be in no back seat if you just out here doing stupidness. You know what I mean? So, but how can you not do that if you're not constantly seeking the face of God? You're not constantly praying. And this is what Jesus was doing in the Bible. He went off to the wherever to go pray. And even back to the example that DTH said, or I think somebody else brought up the example, what if you guys have a decision to make and you guys disagree? So the one thing I didn't hear is why don't we go and pray and go on a fast? Why we just have to defer to the man? Yes, we should, because once again, he is the head of the household. But if Esther and Mordecai could change a whole destiny of a nation with a fast, why we can't fast about it? If it's that much of a major decision, and not, should we paint the walls white or black? If it's a major decision that's affecting, let's go on a fast. Let's pray.
And
I love that. I love that, Wilja.
That's leadership.
And
that's amazing.
Because I know, like, there's some some staunch views based on like what the word says, and like some people have like a rigidness towards it, but like that's why I asked, like, who really runs the house for real? Because I keep it a buck. Like, my mama ran the show at my house. I ain't even finna hold you. And it's like, like, I mean, my pops, like, he definitely knew what was going on, but like, my mom's like,
best leader we know.
But she never made him feel. But I bet you she never made him feel like he wasn't no leader, though.
Exactly. That's why she's the best leader.
You know what I'm saying? You gotta respect your man. You gotta respect your man. And that's the thing. That's the wisdom. You gotta have wisdom.
Right, but okay, but yeah, I mean, so that's what I was saying. I mean, getting to it just like this, a level of compromise that comes in it, because it's not. And going back to that good leadership, it's not always just what I say, because I might not have the best decision. Like you might have come up with it and you'll gauge my thought process like, dang, I didn't think of that this way. Like, that's a really good idea. Like, that's why I always consider it as a partnership. Like, we're a corporation. Like, we got to do this together. Because I'm not always going to have the energy to come up with the idea. Sometimes you got to do it. So, all right. So, I want to circle back to like the leadership in the church, because I don't think we really touched on that. Like, do y'all think like there's a disparity, or I mean, do y'all think women should have a place as far as leadership in the church, or it should only be men leading the church regardless of ability?
I mean,
I don't think it should be only men. Sorry, but I think So I really struggled with this question because a part of me is like, I've seen good women leaders once again, because the women are the ones on their face seeking the Lord, right? I don't know what the men are doing, but the women are the ones. Let's have a prayer on the prayer line Wednesday and Thursday. And do y'all have a prayer line? The men don't answer that. Once again, keep it in
They
your
gotta
head.
hold your point, girl. They gotta hold your point.
Keep it in your head.
Come
So
on.
it's like,
Come on.
but at the same time, if God says that the men are supposed to be leaders in their household, then obviously, if the church is supposed to mirror the household, then obviously the men should be the leaders. But I do think there is a place for women leadership in the church, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in. Honestly, at least the churches that I know of, I think there's a disparity where there's a lot of one-sidedness, right? So you have, those that can preach but can't lead, right? And then you have leaders that happen to be a female, right? And honestly, when you think of leadership, when you boil it all down, leadership means influence, right? So that's value that you bring to people, and that's creating relationships. And when you boil it down again, the people that can do that best is women, right? That's why women can get together and do that prayer meeting and do that kind of things. What we're just talking about is because are naturally gifted at that. That's kind of in their DNA of doing that. So it's kind of it's kind of tricky when it comes to that, because like it's like, all right, who would you rather follow, a male or a leader that happens to be a female? You know what I'm saying? So it's tricky. Of course, naturally, you can find some men that can lead and, preaching, but when you're talking about churches, your main job is to lead others to Christ. So if you can't lead, why are you in that position? You know what I'm saying? So it's tricky, bro. It's tricky, as far as that is concerned. So
Yeah. Now I'm gonna chime in real quick on that too, and it kind of goes back to the point we was talking about. If there's a disparity in the decision, I believe a good leader, male or female, is somebody who's able to see the decisions and be able to pick the best one, and be able to go the course of the best one, even if it's not their own. And if someone has a different opinion and someone has a different course of action, and obviously they probably got their inspiration from God and all that, then they are able to pivot and they're able to go in that direction. That is the best way to go. If you look at it per se, like there should be no problem to answer your question for Chinato. There should be no problem of a man who's a leader in church or has a capacity in church, and let's say they see a woman who does something way better than them, and then there's a space made for them to be able to expound on that gift and to be expound on that thing, and they're a leader of that, and they're able to flourish and be able to grow and build in that sense, and that's good leadership. So that person's a leader. The person who appointed them is a leader in a sense. There's many different forms of leadership. I mean, but if you want to think of it that way, there needs to be some kind of definitely cooperation between men and women, because as DJ said, women are, if you want to speak of it statistically again, women are definitely more social creatures. So there's things that they can do that are generally speaking will be way better than a man in an outreach perspective or in a social capacity. Just generally speaking, once again, I'm talking. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I think it's just, as we start getting wrapped up, I think it's just kind of like a tricky, like a fine line, because like there's so many examples where a man is absent in the household and a woman is the leader, and everybody stays in line, everybody comes up and makes something of themselves, and and it was just her. So I don't think the ability should be limited in certain capacities, but I think like most of what we've been talking about in church is based on a rooting and teaching, and the teachers are appointed, and I think there's different scripture that speaks on that specifically.
Yeah, but to that point, Fortunato, I think what you're describing is a less than ideal situation, right? Like single mothers having to do what they do on their own. That's not really the model God has designed for mankind. So while a woman is able to do it, it's not the best, most optimal situation. So I do think, kind of echoing what Will just said a little while ago, the church is mirroring how the man and husband, or husband and wife, relationship is supposed to be. So when it comes to like a pastor, I do think, if possible, it probably should be a man, but definitely there's space for women to operate in other levels. And of course there are women pastors, and it's not to shade any of them, but I would say that probably it's most ideal if it is a man at the head of that.
The last thing I want to ask y'all real quick as we start closing out is, and this is more so for our ladies on the pod this evening, but as a woman, have you ever felt it necessary to lead in your relationship? And because sometimes like hopefully not, but you might get with a guy who might be cool at first, but then you got to start telling him, okay, we got to do this, or no, I need you to do this, or come on, we got to do this. Like, have you ever felt it necessary to lead in your relationship? And like, how does that transcend to the healthiness of the relationship overall?
I'll go first. I used to deal with that nonsense. But now, as soon as I smell that from a mile away, I cut it off from the jump. If I see from the beginning I'm expected to lead, that's just the end of something that never occurred. Because like Mr. Leviathan said, we choose. So if I end up in a relationship where the man is not the leader, well, most likely he wasn't from the beginning.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've had, I'd say all my relationships, I've had to step up and be the leader. But that's because, of course, I would date men who did not know how to lead. And I've been single for about 2.5 years because God has been doing some therapy with me. And he's teaching me to first see the value that I have in myself so I can choose the right men who I can be with or be submissive to while we're on our purpose, working on our purpose in God. So yes, I have struggled with that, but God is working on me. If we're being honest.
Hey, that's real. And I mean, and the last thing, like, I don't want to prolong it, man, but Will just keeps kind of hitting on this finance part, and it's like I don't think we really like gave it a whole justice, because I know, like, if the man is leading in every other aspect of the relationship, right, but he needs you to lead financially, going back to this manager in Burlington, like, is that a deal breaker? Like, y'all going out to a 5-star restaurant, he like, hey, you got the card on you, making sure it's good, right? I mean, if he's leading in every other area, he's pouring into you, y'all praying, going to church, he cooking. But when y'all step out for a weekend, yeah, man, you got
he should still be the head. If he's doing all of that, then that means he's a leader. I mean, I think it's fair to say that as women, sometimes we do have to encourage our men. We have to pray for our men. We have to support our men. But they're still leaders, and I think we still have to remember that. I think all in all, I'm going to say a scripture because I feel like I need to say this one. Ephesians 5 verse 21 says, submit yourselves unto one another in the fear of God. So I think, yes, the man is the head. The women are, the husbands are to love. The women are to submit. But all in all, they're both loving and submitting to one another. And so when you ask God for that guidance, he'll lead you both to what's best for each other.
I don't want to pick up the check.
No, you're not gonna have to pick up no check. You're not gonna have to pick up no check, girl. Even if I'm making more money, even if I have to put the money in your account, then I don't.
Hey,
is it gonna be a joint account or it's not?
It should already be top before y'all go out.
But 50-50 is okay though, right?
They don't like that either, man. They don't like that either,
my man to pay for
I'm sorry, my daddy.
Hey, 50-50 love, man.
We definitely got to come back and do a part 2.
That's a part
I
2.
wanna-
This is a part
I want
3.
to definitely jump on, like, do y'all believe that bills should be split 50-50? So we'll definitely come back and do a part 2, man. But this has been the Hold Your Point podcast. We are the Hold Your Point podcast crew. We'd like to thank our special guest for joining us this evening for a powerful hour. Talking about women's leadership, man. And don't forget to like us, subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on all the podcast streams and channels, wherever you get your podcast from. And until next time, man, we out of here.
Yes, sir.